The end of the world has come and gone. You and a handful of survivors are digging out of the rubble, and now you are tasked with re-engineering civilization. How are you going to do it? Well, this book is going to help you do it. And even if it doesn't happen, it's still a nice book to have. So what am I talking about? I am talking about the Van Nostrand's Scientific Encyclopedia. Let's see what's in it. Now, you can see there's quite a bit. Now, this particular edition is printed in 1958. It's the third edition. It is currently in print, though. I believe it's on its 10th edition. Still got it on Amazon. But even if you wind up getting an older volume, I said this one here is about 70 years old. It represents about 500 years of scientific advancement, even though some of the technology might be a little dated or might not be as up-to-date as possible. The basics are still there, and then you just have to rebuild back on top of that. Regardless, there's still quite a bit of valid stuff in here because the basics don't change. So what am I talking about? So one thing, as we're flipping through, you'll notice that it's not a how-to on every topic. This is more of a primer where you go through and, oh, an aeolite, a glowing discharge lamp employing a cold cathode. Okay. Even if you have Google, you might not know enough about aeolite to even Google it because you don't even know what the word is. Just flipping through here, you might find things interesting, then you can go ahead and look up later. So I did highlight a couple things that we can look at here. So here's the periodic table with all the elements, which I find quite interesting because I happen to be trained in that. Color. This is very nice to have, because then from there you have photography and filters and wavelengths and all those kind of things. Here's some navigation. Right next to the chemical formula for DDT. Just flipping through here. Oh, we got some organic chemistry. Hydrocarbons. And the nice thing is you can see all of the different chemical formulas from the most simple, CH4, methane, all the way through. You got some benzene rings in here. And by the way, if you know the story of benzene, that was a tough one for them to figure out until somebody came up with the idea, and now it's like, oh yeah, it's so simple. That's the interesting thing about a lot of these things. They are simple once somebody else has figured it out. But like nuclear engineering, which is actually what I'm trained in, it is quite simple, but I guarantee you I could not have thought of the thing. So here we go. This is really interesting here. So here's all your elements again. And it shows the atomic number, which is the number of neutrons in the nucleus. And then it has the different electron shells. Just think of these as orbits. And you've got, like, for instance, hydrogen has 1 neutron and one electron. Helium has 2 neutrons, 2 electrons. And then you can see the shells starting to fill up. And it's 2, 8, 8, 8 all the way down. It's actually quite spooky how chemistry works if you've been trained in it. Scoot through there. Here's interesting. So I highlighted this because even though this is a representation of different kinds of reactors, they all pretty much work the same. But the neat thing is the only difference between a nuclear reactor and every other kind of, a steam locomotive or something like that, or your car engine, really the only difference is the heat source. Other than the heat source, this particular design where you have a hot loop of pressurized water going to a heat exchanger through a condensate pump, and then, or not a condensate pump, a water pump, back into the pressurizer, and then, although they don't show it in this particular drawing, you go out to a bunch of steam turbines, kind of like they show down here. Then you come back through a condensate pump into the heat exchanger again. This is no different than a gas-fired or a coal-fired steamship from 100, 150 years ago. The only difference is the heat source. So the technology, like I said, it's simple. Somebody just had to come up with it first. So flipping down through here, back into the chemistry again, kind of neat. Now this is kind of interesting. Here's a repeater. Now, for those of you who are electrically trained, you'll know that AC was not always the way to transmit electrical power at the beginning. It was actually DC, direct current. And over long distances, you lost a lot of power just due to the resistance in the lines. So you have a repeater. So what this shows, it shows a battery. There's your little the telegraph thing. I do not know the technical term. Normally this would go to a receiver where somebody would be listening to at the other end, to pick up the dots and dashes. But if you're looking at, a couple 100 miles, well, you're not going to have a signal by the time it gets to the receiving station. So you come over here and you have a little magnetic core, and then this thing actually has its own battery, and it repeats the signal out, and you do that as many times until you get to the end of the thing. Now, this is interesting. I selected this too because we're talking about end of the world. So in 1859, there was a geomagnetic storm. It was actually called the Carrington event, largest white light solar flare ever recorded to date, up till today. And about 2.5 days after that flare, the solar storm slammed into the Earth's upper atmosphere, and it pretty much overwhelmed the Earth's magnetic shield, and the telegraph machines caught fire. The telegraph cables caught fire. People were actually injured by getting electrocuted. They actually had to disconnect the batteries, and even after they disconnected the batteries, the electromagnetic fields that were generated across the Earth was enough to electrify the wires, and they were actually communicating without any batteries because of what was induced. Now, if that could happen to a teletype or a telegraph from 150 years ago, what do you think it would do to all of our electronics today? Pretty much everything that wasn't hardened, wasn't grounded, would be destroyed. That's what would happen. So coming over to here, transformers. So we got different transformers here. Again, this representation, if you're an electrician, this is easy. If you're not an electrician, it might take you a while to figure out, but you could still figure it out, how to hook up single-phase and three-phase transformers and such. So that's kind of neat. Now, let's go into the mechanical stuff. I've been concentrating on chemical and electrical, but here's some mechanical stuff. So here's a worm gear. Again, simple. The rotation in this direction turns the gear in this direction, and you have basically moved or changed a force direction from this direction to this direction. Again, simple, but somebody had to think of the thing. Now, of course, that you've seen it, yeah, okay, that makes sense. So really, really neat. It's a neat book. It's been in my family for about 60 years. It was in my dad's estate. I got it recently. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that book. I'm going to keep it. And yeah, so Van Nostrand's Scientific Encyclopedia. I would highly recommend that if you are of this type of persuasion, or if you're just a nerd, get the book. You will enjoy it.